Yan boy, silipin mo nga ulit. Kung nag-aano na sa Facebook ko. Pumasok na eh. At meron na nag-a-addict doon sa loob.
Ayun, lumalabas na.
Silipin mo nga ulit. Kita na?
Ah.
Kung nag-aano na sa... Lumabas nga, patingin nga.
Kailang. Ano wala?
Yun, meron nag-ano eh.
Ako yun.
Hindi, yan boy, silipin mo nga ulit eh. Vasquez Pau eh. Hindi, ikaw yun.
Kanina, eto.
Lumalabas na. Ba't hindi gumagalaw? Ayan, gumagalaw na. Ano sabi ni Pau? Vasquez Pau. Shout out kay Vasquez. Sa aking number 1 viewer.
Ako pala pang... Saan ka nagsusunod ka?
Tara, tagay Pau.
We'd mine asteroids for water ice to get water, an essential element for sustaining human life anywhere in space. Water would help us maintain good hygiene, grow food, and produce breathable air. It would also give us fuel. We just have to refine the water molecules into high-efficiency propellant. In a way, asteroids would be our space gas stations. They would also be our main space supplier of building materials. We'd use asteroid metals like iron to construct low-cost structures of any size we want. We'd also look for precious metals like gold, silver, and platinum, but not to make a ring or a necklace for our new alien girlfriend. Instead, to manufacture high-end electronics, spacecraft components, and laboratory equipment. It's only a matter of time before we can extract the resources that space has to offer. First, we'll need to learn more about the asteroids and their gravitational pulls, determine what kind of mining equipment to use, and figure out which asteroids have the most resources to mine. When we figure out the technical side of things, one question remains. Who will own the asteroids? What if a company or a nation won the race to space mining and privatized all the space resources? Well, expect an economic disruption, because that company or nation would run the whole world, on Earth and in space. Maybe instead of mining asteroids, we could terraform and populate them. But that's a topic for another What If.
Totoo, kailangan ng mundong yun. Wala tayong enough resources.
Pero malapit tayo dyan. Konting, baka mabutan pa natin yun dyan.
Ha?
Mabutan natin yun na nagka-terraform na sila sa ibang lugar.
Ikaw, aabutan mo.
On average, you produce just over 2 kilograms of waste every day. That may not sound like a whole lot, but multiply it by every person on Earth, and suddenly you've got 14.8 billion kilograms of waste being produced every 24 hours. But what would happen if we suddenly stopped recycling? Would the world be quickly flooded with garbage? Would we fire it into space? This is What If. And here's what would happen if everyone stopped recycling. Nearly everything we buy has some recyclable component. Glass, paper, plastic, metal, and other materials. The United States recycles about 65 million tons of waste each year, which is just 30% of its 200 million tons of yearly waste. Around the world, recycling is a massive industry. Countries in Europe like Austria and Germany recycle over 50% of their waste every year. Now, what would happen if everyone on the planet just decided to stop? If the world stopped recycling, every single scrap of waste would end up in a landfill. Well, most of it. With a larger amount of trash, it's inevitable that we'd get more in places where it shouldn't be. At first, you probably wouldn't notice anything. In a best-case scenario, most landfills around the world expect to last 30 to 50 years. One of America's largest landfills began accepting garbage back in 1957 and finally stopped in 2013. That's 56 years of trash. It may take a couple of years, even decades, before garbage starts piling up everywhere. So what happens when those landfills finally fill up? When landfills become too full to take on any more garbage, they're covered with clay and soil to form large hills. You might think the job is done at that point, that you'll never need to think about that stinky garbage ever again. But sadly, that isn't the case. While the garbage is tightly packed underground, it remains in an oxygenless environment. There, it creates methane gas, a huge contributor to global warming. Landfills are the third largest producers of methane gas in the world. And as the planet's landfills continue to fill, they have the potential to eclipse farming and fossil fuel production and become the highest producers. With our landfills full, where would the rest of our garbage go? Well, we wouldn't blast it up into space. That's far too expensive. Instead, we'd most likely burn it, a practice that some European countries are currently doing. However, if every landfill did this, it would create even more potentially deadly pollution, making the air we breathe toxic. Recycling prevents almost 200 million metric tons of greenhouse gases from polluting our environment each year. That's the equivalent of the fumes produced by over 39 million cars on the highway. A lot of our trash would end up in places where it's not supposed to go, like the ocean. Right now, the world's oceans are home to millions of floating pieces of plastic. With no one recycling, even more of this debris would end up in the water, killing millions of fish and making the water unswimmable. But these might be the least of our worries, at least in the short term. What we would start to notice quickly would be our natural resources being destroyed. You see, recycling isn't just about keeping trash out of landfills. It also helps us sustain our natural resources, like timber. It's estimated nearly 7 billion trees are cut down globally each year. In 2017, the United States recycled over 68 million tons of paper. Without this, more trees would have to be cut down to sustain the paper supply, leading to an even higher amount of deforestation than we have today. You can say goodbye to fossil fuels. In addition to making our cars go, they're the source of all our plastic products. Fossil fuels are currently expected to deplete by 2050, but without recycling, fossil fuel consumption would be higher than ever, leading to the precious resource being gone much sooner. So with no one recycling, the world would have no choice but to change. For instance, new water bottles being researched today are being made out of biopolymer, a material that's composed of bacteria. These bottles are designed to biodegrade in just 18 months. That would help a lot, as the world is currently using over 1 million plastic water bottles per minute. Other materials and products would eventually have to follow suit. Maybe one day we'll live in a world where everything is biodegradable, even electronics. But that's a story for another one.
Masisira yung cellphone.
Natutunaw ang puta.
After 18 months, bibili ka ulit. Fuck!
Yeah. Uy, cellphone ko na minipis.
Uy, pasira na cellphone ko.
Try to describe a color that doesn't exist in nature.
Saan na
It
tayo?
doesn't work, does it? Indeed, it's difficult to imagine what is unknown. Approximately the same would be true with four-dimensional space, given that we live in 3 dimensions. As for how the 4D world would look, it just doesn't fit in your head. But we're still going to try to present the 4th dimension. What would everything look like if space really became 4D? And what are 4D creatures in our world capable of? These questions are
Ba't ano
tough
ba yung
and
ilang di ba
require a
meron
lot
ng
of
tao?
mental energy. But the military online game War Thunder helps me to relieve the stress. 1,200 historically accurate units of military machines from all historical eras, from the 1930s to the 1990s, clash in air, sea, and ground battles on over 80 different battlefields that existed from World War II until the Cold War. Click the link in the description, download War Thunder, and have the best time of your life playing online with your friends and showing what you're worth on the battlefield against other players. The game is cross-platform and runs on any PC or console. All newcomers get cool presents, a premium tank or aircraft, and a 3-day free trial of premium membership. See you on the battlefield, right after I tell you about the 4th dimension. So for starters, we need to figure out what all the other dimensions are. Take a look at the line on the screen. This is a 1-dimensional space, and a creature living in such a wretched world can only move left or right. If we only connect several straight lines into a square, then we will get a 2D world and a new direction, up and down. To turn the 2D world into a 3-dimensional figure, we should draw a line from each corner of the square and connect them. And here we've already created a cube or space in which we exist ourselves. Now draw a line
Sabi
from
ko na
each
nga eh.
corner of the cube in any direction and also connect them. It will turn out something like this very strange pattern. Congratulations, you've just created a 4-dimensional space. If you get carried away drawing lines further, you can get 5 dimensions, 6, 7, and so on into infinity. However, you see, it's
Tarantadong to.
quite
Gusto niya alas
realistic
10
to
ako.
draw a 4D or 5D mathematical figure,
Pumasok?
but no one
Hindi.
can see
Gusto
the
niya alas
live
10 ako
area
pumunta dun
of
sa
higher
office.
dimensions.
Sa
So the
pag-i-investan
inhabitants
ko.
of the
Para
1-dimensional world would
ma-meet ko
see
yung oras
instead
niya.
of 2-dimensional creatures, obscure lines. In turn, the inhabitants of the 2-dimensional universe would appear only a flat, very strange projection of the bodies of beings from the 3rd dimension. For example, let's imagine that we are in a 2D universe. It would be difficult for us to get inside a 2-dimensional creature without cutting it, and to move the insides like pieces of applique on a sheet of paper. You can remove the stomach or move the heart, lungs, and kidneys to the left and right, or even pull out a 2D creature from its world and move it somewhere else. About the same scenario, everything will happen if the inhabitants of the 4D universe fall into ours. When higher beings decide to walk on Earth, then perhaps we'll only see some strange bunch of skin lumps. The aliens themselves would be able to consider our planet as much as they like and
Tarantadong to.
conduct experiments with its inhabitants. If lines. In turn, the inhabitants of the two-dimensional universe like this very strange pattern. Congratulations, you've just created. Take a look at the line on the screen. This is a one-dimensional
tong
space,
kausap ko.
and a creature living in such a wretched
Kaya na,
world can
sabi ko,
only
alas
move
8 ako
left or
pwede.
right. If we only connect
sa
several
office.
straight lines into a square,
Sabi ko,
then we will
dun
get
sa
a 2D
pag-invest
world
ako.
and a new direction,
Gusto niya alas
up and
10 ako
down.
pumunta.
To turn the 2D world into a three-dimensional
Tangina para
figure, we should draw a
kasama
line
siya.
from each corner of the square
sabi
and
ko,
connect them. And here we've already created a
Tangina,
cube or
sinungaling ang
space
puta.
in which we exist ourselves.
baka
Now
ikaw ang
draw a
gagawin
line
yung
from
downline.
each
De,
corner
downline
of
nga
the
niya
cube
ako.
in any direction
Di
and
naman ako pwede
also
sumunod sa
connect
schedule
them.
niya.
It will turn out something like this very strange
Tangina,
pattern.
napakasinungaling ng
Congratulations,
puta.
you've just
Nagbubukas raw
created
yung
a
cashier ng alas 10.
four-dimensional space. If
Sabi
you
ko,
get
ang
carried
office
away
hours alas
drawing
8
lines
eh.
further,
So, ibig
you
sabihin,
can
bukas na
get
lahat
5
yun.
dimensions, 6,
Kanina ko raw
7,
nalaman.
and so on into infinity.
Sabi ko, diba?
However, you see, it's quite
Diba yung
realistic to draw
pag-usapan
a
nyo yung
4D
papunta ng
or
farm?
5D mathematical figure, but no one can see the live area of higher dimensions. So the inhabitants of the one-dimensional world would see
Paprangkahin ko nga ito
instead of
pag nandun na ako.
two-dimensional
Sabi
creatures
ko, ayoko sa lahat yung
obscure
binibigyan ako
lines.
ng
In turn, the
misinformation.
inhabitants of the two-dimensional universe would appear only a flat, very strange projection of the bodies of beings from the third dimension. For example, let's imagine that we are in a 2D universe. It would be difficult for us to get inside a two-dimensional creature without cutting it, and to move the insides like pieces of applique on a sheet of paper. You can remove the stomach, or move the heart, lungs, and kidneys to the left and right, or even pull out a 2D creature from its world and move it somewhere else. About the same scenario, everything will happen if the inhabitants of the 4D universe fall into ours. When higher beings decide to walk on Earth, then perhaps we'll only see some strange bunch of skin lumps. The aliens themselves would be able to consider our planet as much as they like and conduct experiments with its inhabitants. If desired, they'll easily, without spilling a drop of blood, climb into our body and pull out the insides. Or even throw us somewhere far away from the universe, and we, being in some indescribable place,
4D.
wouldn't even understand what's what. It's quite another thing if one day we somehow can become full-fledged inhabitants of a 4D world. That's when you can have some serious fun. For example, to teleport an infinite number of times from one place to another, changing universes like gloves. Now it seems fantastic, but maybe someday we'll actually be able to do such unimaginable things. The fact is that in the past, the Earth had more dimensions. This follows from the general theory of relativity. According to some scientists, under certain circumstances, we
Ayaw
have a
niya kasi
chance
ako
to
dumirekta sa
return to them
admin.
once again. At first glance, this would be very
Sabi
cool
ko,
because the higher dimensions
wala kasi
provide
wala
mega
dito.
opportunities. Would
Mag-usap
you
na
like
tayo,
to live
dapat.
in a 4D
Hayaan mo
universe?
akong magano.
What would you do first? Write your versions in the comments. Although the researchers have already
baka
done it
meron
for
siya
you,
tinatago
scientists
na
warn of very
ayaw
strange
niya,
and
baka
possibly
takot
catastrophic
na baka
changes
masulot,
that await
ganun.
us during the transition to 4D. In one of the
Ilang
models,
beses
the
na ako
fourth dimension
misinform sa
disintegrates
mga
gravity,
patakaran eh.
electromagnetism, nuclear,
Unang
and other fundamental forces in a
paltos niya sa akin
whirlwind.
eh, register
Physicists
muna
say that
bago ano,
according
ay
to the
bayad
usual
muna bago
scheme, these
mag-register eh.
forces act
Kalokohan
only
yun.
Sabi
in
ko,
our
oh,
3D
sabi ko,
universe. For example,
nabasa ko
let's
lang,
consider what
kaka,
happens to
pwede
nuclear
mag-register
forces.
muna
The
eh.
nuclei and atoms are the building blocks of all
Kaya nga
matter. All
mag-ano ako
bodies
eh.
and all objects in the universe are made from them. In higher dimensions, these vital microparticles will receive more degrees of freedom to maneuver, and the links between them will weaken. As a result, the enzymes
Ayaw
will lose
pakausap sa
activity,
upline
proteins will
upline
change
niya.
shape, and
Eh
DNA will
puta,
no
puro
longer
kasi
be
nung
encoded
puro
in
mali-mali binibigay
molecules.
ng info.
This means that people's bodies will crumble to dust, and not even a trace of humanity would remain. True, there are other models developed in the framework of string theory. They showed that such a global catastrophe may not occur during the transition to 4D. According to the results of experiments, the electromagnetic and nuclear forces would remain within 3 dimensions. Only gravity would begin to flow into the 4th. From this leakage, gravity would weaken, and this would turn the whole world upside down. For example, asteroids that are stuck together in space will scatter. A comet approaching the sun would quickly evaporate, while forming an incredibly long and enchantingly beautiful tail. And 4D people will be very different. They'll be able to move not only up and down, left and right and back and forth, but also in one more, yet incomprehensible direction. And because of this decline in gravity, they'll start jumping miles. Something like the popular superhero, the Hulk, in movies and comics. The planet itself will also become a mutant. The Mendeleev periodic system would stretch from left to right and become shorter from bottom to top. Each element after helium would acquire strange properties. For example, 4D magnesium would be a noble gas, not a metal. Not only will the composition of the Earth change, but also its appearance. The planet will greatly increase in size, especially around the equator. In this ghostly multi-world, even light and thunder will be different. In the odd dimension, the third and fifth and seventh, light obeys our usual laws of physics. But in even-numbered dimensions, in particular the fourth, rather strange things would happen to light. Any light would shine like an incredibly long light, and an especially distant one, as if someone reflected a bright light from the moon. Similar things will happen with sound. Sound's waves will not spread through the air. They'll move backward towards themselves like ripples on the surface of water. So, setting off fireworks, in our world, we would see and hear an explosion for a moment. In a four-dimensional space, an explosion of fireworks, even outdoors, would sound like prolonged thunder and roar for a very long time like a fire. Even the orbits of celestial bodies, according to scientists like light and sound, are also not stable in all dimensions. They're stable only in 2 and 3 dimensions. In all other dimensional orbits, they would be spiraling or flying apart. So the Earth, after moving into 4-dimensional space, would move away from the sun and become colder. Although, because of this, humanity would no longer have to fight global warming. However, if the additional dimension reaches the size from Earth to the sun, this advantage will quickly lose its meaning. Scientists assume that all celestial bodies in our solar system will lose their connection with each other and within themselves due to the leakage of gravity. Even if such instability lasts only a couple of days a year, and gravity is normal every 3 months, the solar system will completely fall apart in just 100 years. The transition to the fourth dimension promises a terrible catastrophe. But scientists don't deny that they haven't sufficiently studied this issue. Perhaps soon they'll create a model in which 4D won't destroy anything. But on the contrary, will open unprecedented opportunities for our planet. And people, for example, will be able to easily spend the weekend beyond worlds, having rested and gathered impressions. And while you're not in the fourth dimension, give us your thumbs up if you like the video. And click on the bell so as not to miss new releases. There are a lot of interesting things
Pag
ahead.
i-on ko yung game turbo, hindi ka na makakatawag ngayon. Tsaka buti na lang, hindi ko ini-stream. Kasi pag in-stream ko yung laro ko, alam ko may mang-i-istorbo sa akin.
Humans have made amazing strides when it comes to science and knowing how the world works. Do you know everything? Of course not. What makes life truly interesting is that we haven't figured out everything yet. There are still puzzles to solve and mysteries to unfold when it comes to our Earth. From weird issues with nature to mysterious happenings all over the world, we're unsure of whether we should be intrigued or unsettled. Stick around until the end to find out what Earth-centric mystery has us looking to the sky for answers. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe to the Red subscribe button. While you're in the click-happy mood, go ahead and give this video a like. Now, there are 10 mysterious things happening in the world right now.
Sabi natin, alas 9, maniniwala ako sa alas 9.
Open ng cashier.
One could
Pero
call it a
simula ng
discovery.
office hours
Others might
is
call this a mystery.
7:30.
As humans who have
Yan ang
studied and
pinakamaaga.
researched science and have learned so much about how our world works, finding something that breaks the rules is a rather mysterious adventure. In February 2019, it was announced that scientists recently discovered
Yan na pulutan natin.
this type of magnet shouldn't be able to exist. And
Sigurado
yet,
yan,
it
kinabukasan
does.
puro tayo.
Researchers have already decided what the new magnet could be useful for, and it is shown to be useful for data storage. This magnet is made from a uranium compound that seems to follow its own rules. Normal magnets work in a way where constituents are attracted to each other. This new magnet is singlet-based.
Ganyan talaga kulay ng mata na yan.
In and out of existence, creating an unstable
Hindi
force.
kulay yan.
Usually,
Hindi
singlet
coloration yan.
magnets have fields that are locked down by a particle, and therefore shouldn't be able to magnetize. But now it seems that they can. What does the discovery of this new magnet mean? Does it mean that it's always been there and we just haven't noticed? Or does it mean that the world
Tara na.
around us is changing?
Kumain
We're
na
going to move
tayo.
on with probably one of the most
Hindi ang
concerning
gaganap pagka
mysteries
may
around at the
Huwag
moment.
na.
It seems that animals are losing their lives in masses, and
Pagtitripa mo pa
scientists aren't sure why it's happening. One lost animal isn't enough to
Loko-lokong
set off
puta.
alarms,
Gusto niya ako
but when
mag-adjust sa
hundreds of
schedule niya.
animals start turning up lifeless, scientists in the
Sabi
general
ko, pag
community have
nag-i-invite ka,
started
ikaw
showing
mag-a-adjust sa
concern.
schedule ng
In
mga
August
in-invite mo.
2018, an abnormal
Eh,
amount of
tatanungin,
seals
gaano ka
started
na ba
washing
katagal
up
sa
on
ganitong
shore in the
industriya?
northern part of New England. It's
Eh,
normal to see
ilang
some
networking na
animal
rin ang
bodies wash
dinaanan
up,
mo,
but
kaya
nothing to this
hindi na rin
level.
siya uso
Most of the 400
Hindi mo
lifeless
ba alam
seals
ilang
ended up on the beaches
networking
in
na
Maine
dinaanan?
over a 3-week period. One of the seals tested positive for the bird flu, which is one of the most dangerous illnesses to hit the world. In 2017,
Totoo yan,
thousands
pre.
of Manhattan fish washed up with no sign of a cause of passing. In February 2017, over 300 whales
That's-
beached themselves on the
Iwasan
coast of New
mag-misinform.
Zealand. Another 100 whales were left stranded on the beach as well because no one could get them back into the water. To continue with the issue of losing animals in the masses, there are also weird smells to be handled. Yep, that's right. Weird smells. Many people in different cities have been experiencing phantom smells. Usually, when one experiences a phantom smell, it means that there could be something neurological going on in the brain. Some people experience phantom smells before they get a migraine. Phantom smells could even be a sign of a stroke or seizure. So, when it happens to one person, then it's likely explainable. But what happens when it's an entire city experiencing a phantom smell? In October 2018, the Great Stick... While scientists have uncovered many of the world's greatest mysteries, there are still some places out there that baffle them. Phenomena that seem to occur by magic, areas
Ako rin.
that
Ikaw ang
lead to
dapat
mythical creatures,
mag-adjust.
and
Kasi
sacred
ikaw
holy
ang
lands all
manghihikayat.
make up some of the
Ikaw
strangest
ang may
places in the
kailangan.
world.
Yung ako dati
The
nung
only
gano'n,
question you should
sila
be asking
nag-adjust sa
yourself
schedule ko.
about
Yung
these
ako nag-i-invite,
places
ako
is
naman yung
how fast
nag-adjust
you
sa
can book
schedule
your
ng
plane
lahat.
ticket
Diba?
to go see them.
Diba?
Before we get
Kung
started, make sure to
kita ka
subscribe
rin,
to
kung
The
di mo kaya,
Richest for
sabihin
more
mo.
mind-blowing content. Now,
Kung di mo
let's
alam,
take a look
sabihin
at
mo
the 10
dahil hindi naman
strangest places on Earth
lahat ng tao,
scientists are still
lalo na
trying
Hindi
to
dito.
boy, ang
understand.
magandang sabihin dyan, alam mo, pagdating sa scheduling, sabihin mo sa kanya.
While many of us love the ocean, it's so vast
Marami
and
akong
so
napagdaanan
mysterious that we still
pagdating
don't
sa
know
scheduling.
everything there is to know
Yan.
about it.
Yung mga
We especially
experiences
don't
mo,
know
yun lang
a lot
sabihin mo
about
sa
the
kanya.
ocean
Kasi
floor.
kung
As the
paprangkay
oceanographer
mo
who
naman
rediscovered the
masyado, ikaw
Titanic,
balasubas
Robert
ka
Ballard,
magsalita
said, with
Sabi
only
ko
a
nga,
small
nag-visit ako
percentage of the
kanina
ocean
eh.
floor mapped, our knowledge of what's beneath is
Ano,
about as
so yung
detailed
alas
as
10 na
a
yan, schedule mo pala yan. Bigyan ko na ng kapitsada ito.